Hello everybody and welcome to my comic review. I am Rainbow Red Panda and today I am going to be reviewing Chin Music number 2. Now, I just got this last week. It came out a couple weeks ago, but it didn't come in, so I just got it and I read it a few days ago and I've still been thinking about it, and sadly the parts that I'm talking about most are not something that's actually in the Chin Music storyline, but it's a preview of another comic that is at the very end, and I will touch on that because I can't just do a review on this comic and not touch on this other comic that's at the end of it. But this issue, if you go and watch my Chin Music number 1 review, which I will post in the information below, I had a few mixed feelings about it. This one is better than the first one by far. It's still not as awesome as I thought it would be, but the story is coming together. It's a lot more interesting. There's a lot more information. It's not something that I found boring at all. It's not necessarily my type of comic. Like, it touches on, like, it's basically about, this issue is about, like, Al Capone's death, and they're investigating it, but they're also covering it up. And then they are getting together with this guy named Shaw, who they're pretty sure has information with them and all of that. They end up making a deal with him at the end, and it looks like they might try to resurrect Al Capone. I don't know. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It has a different look on it. The fact that Al Capone is actually a person and he's in this comic, it's sort of weird. I don't think that, this is obviously not based on, the actual death of him at all, but I guess it's just a theory of, what would happen if Capone died this way. I don't know. I'm guessing that whoever wrote this, Mr. Niles here, he has a definite love of gangsterness. So, not necessarily my type of comic, but those are usually the types of comics that become my favorites. And it being an Image title is very interesting because they are a very up-and-coming company with comics and vastly becoming definitely a third player for Marvel and DC. Image in the future, I definitely expect very awesome things from them. I have yet to read anything from them that I absolutely hate, but I have not read everything from them, so I'm not gonna say that all of their stuff is wonderful, but they have a fairly good track record, at least with me. This issue is standard. I don't know. I liked it. The artwork is good, but sometimes it gets confusing. Like in these scenes, like this right here, it's kind of hard to see like what's going on with it because it's a lot of dark and it's a lot of like mixtures of things. Like things just kind of mix together and then it's hard to see like what's here and what's there, and I don't know. I mean, I like it, but it's not something that you can really necessarily get the story just by looking at the art. Some comics you can. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know that I've said before, like you can just read the artwork and not even have to read the dialogue. Like just by looking at the pictures and things, you know what's going on. But this is not one of those. The artwork isn't bad, but it is not the center of attention for me. I read the page, I read the dialogue and all of that, and then I look at the artwork afterwards and I kind of admire it. And that's just how I read this particular comic. You might read it differently, or I don't know, you might not read the series at all. But that's just how I read this one. I think that the next issue, which comes out in a month or two, you're not going to have a 4-month wait between issues like you did with this. You're not going to forget that it exists, I guess, by the time the 3rd issue comes out, which that is a good thing for me. Like I've said, whenever the 2nd one came out, I literally forgot that this title pretty much existed. But it did. The 2nd issue did not disappoint me. I don't know, the first one was a little bit of a letdown. And this one, it sort of redeemed itself, but it's still not as good as I think it's going to get. I think actually the first 2 issues are mainly set up, and the actual story is going to come with the whole resurrection, potentially, and all of that. So that should be at least started in the next issue, if not fairly completed, but we'll see. I will definitely do a review on that issue whenever it comes out in the next few weeks, I think is when it's supposed to come out. So I will keep you guys updated on that. Now, at the end of this comic, Image has some advertisements for some of their other comics, like 5 Ghost and Sex Criminals, which I haven't read either one of those, but they both sound kind of interesting to me, so we'll see what happens if I end up reading those or not. But then you have this story, and it's called Pretty Deadly, and it looks cool. Like it's like about butterflies and bunnies, and it's like they're kind of like talking to each other in like animal animal senses. I don't know how animals, I have 2 rabbits, but I don't necessarily know how they talk to each other, but you know, animals can definitely communicate in my opinion. So this butterfly and this rabbit are kind of communicating with each other, and then out of nowhere this girl just shoots the rabbit in the head, and I'm just like, what is this? Like, I was traumatized kind of, like, look at this, like, it's horrible. This bunny just died, and I have a thing for bunnies, so yeah, that was not a good time for me. But it goes on basically in October, which probably means sometime this month. Pretty Deadly #1 comes out. I'm not exactly sure what it's about because at the end it's definitely not centered around a bunny and a butterfly. It's centered around this girl that has murdered this bunny, and I'm not really sure what she has to do with any of it. It kind of ends in like this Wild West looking thing with this guy talking about the girl. So I don't know, that seems kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to probably get the first issue just to see what it's about. A lot of people have been saying, oh, well, Image, you know, just buy the trades, but I would rather buy the first issue to see how I feel about it than to spend like between $9 and $15 on a trade just to not like the whole thing. So that's what I'm gonna do. And speaking of Image, I don't like to bring this up, but if you guys ever go to any conventions, just as a warning, maybe I'm the only one that this happened to, but I'm not sure, but if you guys ever go to conventions and you buy something from the Image tent, or the Image booth, I bought some stuff from there at C2E2 and at Comic-Con. I have the same experience. I paid with my debit card, and a whole month and a half later, they finally charged my card. So if you guys ever buy anything from Image at any of these booths, it's potentially, they might not take out the money for a while. So, just a thing, if you're like needing every spare piece of money that you have in your bank account, at least keep records of things or something, because in a couple months you might be like, oh my gosh, where did this $25 go? Oh, well, Image just now took their money out, even though I bought this thing like 2 months ago. So that's just something I thought I would throw out there. Image is the only company that I've had this problem with, but I mean, if it doesn't bother you, it's not a big deal to me, but it's just something that's just kind of annoying. Like, you think they'd want their money like now, not in 2 months, but that's how it went. So if you guys ever go to any conventions where they have Image booths, just know that. In the future, I'll probably just pay with cash, just because it bothers me, because then I'm like, did they take out the money twice? Like, I don't know, I just think about stuff like that. So that's not really anything to do with my comic review, it's just something that's Image related, and since I'm doing a review on an Image comic, I just kind of threw it out there. But Chin Music #2, I would suggest getting it if you haven't already. It's not as bad as the first one, and I think that, like I said with the first one, I think the best is yet to come, and I still think that's the case. But this one was definitely a better issue. You got more information, and it had more awesomeness to it. It's still not my favorite comic ever, but I like it more than I thought I would, for sure. I really had low expectations for this issue, and it definitely exceeded just by being more interesting, even though I don't necessarily read gangster comics. But what can I say? I will stick with it for a little while longer at least. So I suggest that you guys do the same, just so that I have someone to talk to about it. So that's all I have for this episode, and I will link as much information as I can about this stuff in the comments, or in the information section, and I will see you guys with my next review. Bye!